Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Christine. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to very important tips how you can recession-proof your MLM business. This is a podcast. I haven't listened to it yet, and somebody wants to advise us how we can recession-proof our network marketing business. First of all, it's not our business, it's the company's business, but I found that topic rather interesting because I read the title and I thought, how are you going to recession proof your time in a network marketing company? The only things that come to my mind is work harder, try to sell more, try to recruit more, and the second is get actual streams of income besides network marketing if it doesn't pay you well. If you hear a lot of weird noise, my neighbors are very active. One of my neighbors is back from her vacation and the first thing that she does is vacuum. So if it's noisy on the side, it's because we're going to vacuum the smallest room in the entire apartment for an hour straight. Hopefully you can't hear that. But back to the topic of today's video, recession-proof your business. Are you worried about how to position yourself during a recession? Let's tackle this together and turn challenges into opportunities. Let's tackle this together. A big shout out and a big thank you to the channel members. I appreciate that you're here. I appreciate your support. Big thank you to the people who regularly watch these videos. I really do appreciate your support. And hello and welcome. And also a big thank you to the people who newly joined, who subscribed to the channels and have started to watch the videos. There has been a not unsubstantial growth on this channel, at least in the small corner of the internet, at least not unsubstantial on my terms. So welcome. I really, really appreciate that you're here. And I hope that you're interested in this video, how to recession-proof your MLM business. This is a podcast and I will play it at 1.3 speed, but the quality is not necessarily, I guess, what you would expect from a podcast. It sounds more like a team call that was recorded and then also uploaded to Spotify. Just a heads up. I will try to make the audio as good as I can, but we have to work with a not great podcast audio from the start.
Yeah, I'm excited to be hanging out with you guys today, this morning for a little bit, because I want to talk about something that I feel like might be a little taboo to say, but to be completely honest, I think it's a necessity. I think it's something that we really need to address and have a plan of action for, and kind of just be, I don't want to say necessarily completely transparent about within our own business and with our team, but I do think it's something that, can serve you. And that is to recognize that we are in a recession, right? Or technically, I would say that is what the majority of, all of the financial gurus are saying, or they're saying, hey, it's kind of like one, so based on your opinions of the situation, I think we can all agree that things are just a little bit different right now. And probably even, whether it's for your own finances that you are, noticing, right? Like even myself making a decision to downsize, and no worries, Holly, making a decision to, downsize for our own families, like financial goals, or whether you are, tightening up and doing some Dave Ramsey stuff, or maybe even you are picking up your business a little bit more in your direct sales business, or maybe even some of you had to, like quote unquote, go back to work. And then you're also still doing your, direct sales business. And so I think there's a variety of people that are feeling the tension right now financially in a lot of different ways, right? And so I just thought, this is something that it's not always really fun per se to discuss, but I think it's necessary. I think it's something just like, in school, one thing that I heard recently, I was hearing Gary Vee say, someone asked him, like, if you were to decide what the educational system taught in school, it was kind of like, what would you teach? And he said, of course, I do think you need to know the basics of math and this and that or whatever. But he was like, we have a calculator in our pocket, right? Everywhere we go. And said at the end of the day, people need to be more equipped for the real world, right? Like how to handle your finances and taxes and, being a good human. He was just, and I was like, that is so true, and I think it's because a lot of times, we paint this picture of, just sign up and do this thing and it'll be super easy. And you can make it's a side hustle when really, there's a lot more to it, right? You guys that are here, there's a lot more too, rather than, saying, oh, let's make some extra money and it just all flows. No, you have to have strategy. You have to have, I wouldn't necessarily say sales experience, but that whole concept of no sales experience needed and all that kind of stuff. Well, to me, it's not that you need it to start, but you need it to sustain.
I'm glad that she is honest here because a lot of people still do these things and say these things. You don't need to be good at sales, you don't need to be a salesperson, and you can make easy money here, but that's not the case. So to prep people in advance and to be somewhat more transparent and honest, I think it's good. I don't think that the Huns are as honest as they should be, because if they were truly transparent and honest, nobody would join network marketing anymore. Because if you told them in advance what they have to do, the hoops they have to jump through, then hardly anybody would ever join, I suspect. But it's good that she's more honest about this, because I agree. Yeah, don't blindfold people and invite them into a business opportunity where most people lose money, and then afterwards, like a bait and switch, it's surprise, you have to do completely other things and you have to work a lot harder than I told you in advance, and you have to have other skills.
Okay. And so we're going to talk about that today. So the first, I would say 20, 30 minutes or so, we're going to do where I'm just going to share like a training on this topic. And then the last few minutes, we'll have some time for Q&A, coaching questions, all of the things. Okay. So I did take some notes because I was just kind of thinking through, in general, what kind of transpired when COVID happened. So I'm going to take you guys kind of back to talk a little bit about that timeline. And I know it's been like, I feel like it's like a dead horse. Like people have beat this topic to death. Okay. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I'm thinking through this lens of, if you can have an insane amount of success during a pandemic, right? Like what is holding you back from having success now? Right now, I know at least it's not everywhere, but at least in the US, there was a lot of money being funneled into the economy from the government. But my point is, in saying this, there was also a lot of unknown and a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people were scared. And that's kind of how they're feeling now. I think there's a little bit more confidence because, it's almost like, okay, we've been here before, like back in 2008, when the housing market crashed and all of these things happened or whatever. And so I just thought, let's kind of revisit that feeling, right? If you're, how many of you, whether you're on here live or you're listening to this on the replay, I just want to encourage you to first kind of remember that initial response that you had.
I would say, though, if you're in network marketing, the situation during the pandemic was a different one than it is now, and people are not more confident now. I would say in network marketing, it's the exact opposite. But it has turned around to the better for people, job market for people who are not in network marketing, because there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of people wanted to make a side hustle or they wanted to substitute an income. That's why during the height of COVID, the Huns didn't even have to do a lot. People were signing up left and right in the hopes that they would be able to make an income, and now this has died down and now our work has to start again. Because there was this uncertainty, MLMs for the most part were booming because people were afraid to go to their work, to physically leave their homes, and because people wanted to make money or needed to make money because they were laid off or their partner was, or they needed to support family members who were in trouble. That is why during the pandemic it was rather easy for MLMs to grow, and it happened rather quickly. But now the situation is a different one. Now the regular 9-to-5 jobs are on the up because there are more opportunities than ever to work in a not super classical job environment. You still have a classical job, a 9-to-5 job, a corporate job, but if it's a job where you don't have to go into an office, a lot of companies now, more than ever, offer fully remote jobs or hybrid models that are very much to the advantage of the employee. So things have switched around, and I do not think that you can compare the current situation to the pandemic.
Kind of remember that initial response that you had when you heard about COVID. I can speak for myself in saying that, I was actually I was getting ready to fly to Paris with Pampered Chef, okay, France. And I remembered feeling like, I think I was just kind of in denial, right? Like I was just kind of like, oh, this is just like, just wash your hands. Like I was one of those, right? I was like, just wash your hands. Like it'll all be fine, right? And then, we're in the airport and it's literally like people have masks everywhere. And there was probably like, I don't know, 25, maybe even 40%, like not quite half, but quite a bit that still weren't wearing masks. So we were in the lower percentage and we were like, man, like, when we were traveling, we would see people in masks, but it was usually like certain cultures or, people with compromised immune systems. And so the amount that we saw, we were kind of like, oh, maybe this is like, like maybe there's something to this, whatever. But we like went all over Paris and everything was happening. And on like day 3 or something, I can't remember. I think we like laid down. I was just so exhausted from sightseeing and all the things. I laid down And Chris and I on that trip had made the decision that he was going to quit his job and help with the kids. Right. And so we were like, oh, this is what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And we're sitting there in the hotel room. And for whatever reason, I think I was laying down and he turned on the TV. Of course, he was like, I don't speak French. So he was literally like, I have no idea what they're saying. But they were talking about COVID and like all the, whatever. And he was kind of like, he was like, this is on like every channel. Like, I feel like this is kind of a big deal. Right. And so anyway, he goes to his phone and is like looking up, researching it. And he's like, Becky, like, this is kind of like, I think this is like something we need to pay attention to, and I was kind of like, oh, here we go. Got someone in the waiting room. And so I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm just like, it'll be fine. Don't worry, whatever. So anyway, fast forward, Pampered Chef was like, changed everyone's flights and all this to come home early. I came home on the day I was supposed to come home because I was coming home on the day they had planned the trip for, but there were a lot of people that were extending and they changed all of their flights without even waking them up. Like literally they did it overnight and everyone was going home the same day. And we came home and it was like, right, like we all were there, everything shut down. And it was kind of in that moment that, I think most people, when they are faced with any kind of trial, right, like you have the decision. You can either like run away, right? People are known to run away from pain or towards pleasure. And so for me in this season, I had that decision that, looming like, ooh, what do you do? Right. Cause I think I was at that time a senior executive director. We were working on national and I was, we were like right there. We had, it was very close. And so I was kind of like, great. Right. My initial response was like, great. All this hard work, did any of you guys feel that way? All this hard work that I put in is just going to be gone. Like, it's like, wait, this is awesome. And so I had my like 5-minute pity party and Chris and I both decided, okay, you can't quit. Like we were like, you can't, we need just in case, whatever, we'll hang on to all the things for a little while. And we were kind of faced with this decision of like, what could possibly happen? And instead of number one, dismissing it, and painting like this rose colored whatever to my team, or also being like a Debbie Downer, no offense if your name is Debbie, but like, instead, like, it was kind of like I was sitting in one of two camps. Like I could either be like, oh, no, it's fine. We're going to be fine. Or I could be like, this really stinks. Right. And I was literally sitting there looking at these two options and I was thinking, no, like, I don't like either one of those. Right. I'm not going to pretend like this is not happening. I'm not going to, also be super negative about it because the reality is so many of my leaders at that time, this was their full time, just like me, right? Like I had come to a place in my business where a lot of the leaders in my organization, this is what they were doing full time. And so I had this decision as a leader that I was thinking, man, they need this just as bad as I do. Right. And so while we don't want to dismiss the pain and sadness and like horror and scarcity of like what is going on in our world, I do think we need to get creative. Right. And so I called like this meeting with my team or my leaders. And I just was like, all right, guys, I had that decision. I said, okay, here's what's going to happen. People are going to be scared. People are going to be whatever, right? Like, let's first just call it for what it is, right? We're uncertain. I have no idea what's about to happen, right? For all I know, our company could shut down in a year. Like, for all I know, whatever. Like, it is what it is. Okay. So let's address it. Sit with it for a second. We can be scared for a minute, but then say, okay, I told my leaders, you have one of two decisions. You can either sit in your sad, scared, whatever, and nothing will happen, right? Or you can say, okay, what can I do? Right? Like, what can I do? And so and even today, right? I'm saying all this to say, some of you may be looking at your business and you're comparing it, right, to, as we all know the rest of the story, COVID, for whatever reason, it accelerated, right? We could get into all the details of why we think it is. People were on their phone, money, inflation, whatever we want to talk about, whatever. That's not the point. The point is though, you guys know the rest of the story.
There is a point, though, that I find very important. Network marketing companies blew up during the pandemic because people were recruited left and right because they were afraid and because they wanted to bring in money. And the Huns were telling people, yeah, you can come to us here. You can make a side hustle. And most people lost even more money during that time. The predatory pitches, the predatory posts. It's unimaginable what the Huns did back then, but it was rather easy for them to recruit a lot of people, and the health and wellness companies on top of this alleged opportunity that you get. Besides that, the health and wellness companies, they were also extremely predatory with the product they had, claiming that their products could cure COVID, that they could help with your immune system, that way you wouldn't be sick and your life will go on as if nothing ever happened. That is is why network marketing companies blew up during the pandemic, and that is why companies like Pampered Chef, where she was in as well, I'm not sure if she's still in this or if she's a full-time coach at this point. That is why even companies who didn't even sell health or wellness products, why they were able to blow up, because it was an exceptionally stressful time for most people and they were hoping for an income. And the Huns promised them that, but they couldn't hold on to their promise. Most people lost money and were in even more severe situations than they were before.
It inflated, the business exploded, people were looking for work, Okay. So it was like, great, that's awesome for that standpoint. Obviously, there was a lot of like death and sadness and, whatever. And honestly, I think as a country, as a world, like, I think we are all still living in some like PTSD trauma, right? Like you hear about somebody with COVID and you're like, oh, and you're kind of like, oh no, it's still kind of there. And so I think what I want to encourage you to do is to not blindly go into a, recession. Don't completely ignore and say, you know what, like, oh, well, things are just going to pan out the way they're going to pan out. I can get another job or I can do this. I think first you have to make the decision, like, what is your course of action? Are you going to figure out how to make your direct sales business work? Like if that is your priority, or are you someone that's like, you know what, like I do love my direct sales business and I think it's awesome and I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm also going to go back to teaching, or I'm also going to get a part-time job. Or I know Sarah's like, nope. And that's fine though, right? Like to each their own. Like I look at it like the best thing about this industry is it can conform to the life that you want. Right. And so there's no shame. I think we need to be okay with that too. We don't need to shame people on our team or peers or whoever if they make that decision. If they're like, I'm going to do this or that. And to me, what that tells me is, it might be that they want to go back, but it also could be that they're worried and they're scared and they are, they're not at a place they don't have the confidence to figure it out, right?
They don't have the confidence to figure it out. I mean, I'm glad she says, hey, we don't shame people here on this team. I hope they really don't do that. It's a very logical decision to say, this network marketing business doesn't make me the money that I thought it would. It doesn't help me to pay my actual bills, and that's why I need to go back. If I wanted to pursue this full time and I'm not making anywhere close to the money I'm currently making, I either need to leave here, try to take as many people as possible, if I have a team, with me to a new MLM and hopefully be better there, grab all of the bonus payments in the beginning, or I need to go back to an actual job. And for a lot of people, that is very embarrassing and very shameful. I don't think it is. It's a very smart decision to say, you know what, if this doesn't pay for my life, then it's just a pricey hobby and that's not acceptable. I need to make money, so I will get a real job, or I will go back to the job I had before full time.
It's like that quote from Marie Forleo, everything is figure outable. And I believe even today, direct sales and network marketing is the best business model out there, period, because the income opportunities are endless still, even during the recession. And so I'm going to talk to you guys about a couple of like suggestions that I have.
We will listen to that in a second. I mean, it was just about 10 minutes of foreplay before we get to the actual tips, but the opportunities are endless. That is a myth. Yes, there is an opportunity for people to make a lot of money, but how realistic is it? When we see all of the data, all of the facts, all of the statements from individual companies that most people do not even make a profit. According to the FTC, 99.6% of people in network marketing lose money. If we take a look at income disclosure statements from individual companies, most people are at the bottom ranks and they lose money. So while it is possible for people to have this uncapped income, which is ultimately always capped because you can only recruit so many people and your company probably also just operates in so many countries, it is possible, but it is not probable.
I'm going to talk to you guys about a couple of like suggestions that I have for you in regards to how can I almost like recession proof my business? How can I, show up in a way that's not acting out of desperation, right? Because that desperation creates distrust. And so when I, was referencing that meeting that I had with my leaders, we got all that out of the way. We're like, okay, it is what it is. Okay, now what? And then I asked that question, what are we going to do about it? And so I opened it up for conversation, and so this could be even something that you do with your leadership team or even your upline, or if you have like a business bestie, like, what are we going to do about it? Right? Like things have slowed down, or recognize, a season, even just in general, right? Like certain seasons of your business might be slower. And so instead of just being like, it is what it is, right? It's like, no, what are we going to do about it? Right? Are we going to be okay with the result regardless? Or do we want to get creative, right? It kind of makes me think of that Friends quote that everyone knows where Ross is like, pivot, right? Because sometimes, whether we like it or not, we kind of have to pivot. We kind of have to tweak things. And it's not that we have to completely abandon what's working. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if you want to get the same results that maybe you were getting during that, rise of COVID, or what, or even just like your best month, maybe you've had a really successful month in 2023 and you're like, man, I wish I could do that every single month, right? Like maybe you had 10,000 in sales, or you recruited, 5 people in 1 month, and you're like, man, I really wish I could do that every single month. So then ask yourself, what was I doing, right? How can I be creative, right? How can I have those results? Okay. And so,
So get together with your teammates and brainstorm. That in itself is not a bad thing. I think it's always good. One person alone can only do so much, but a group of people can have a lot of smart ideas if you only listen to other people. But what is the result? What came out of that brainstorming? Because once again, comparing the current situation, the recession in network marketing, to COVID is something that you cannot compare. Most people didn't even have to do a lot during COVID. Also, the ones who joined early in the pandemic were able to rise in the ranks to a degree that most people were not afterwards, or their success is not what it is now, because most people who joined back then, when MLMs were on the up, left afterwards, because there are more opportunities than ever, whether it is in the real job world, whether it is working as an influencer in some way, shape, or form, and selling over TikTok Shop or Instagram or YouTube in some way, shape, or form. Those things are not comparable. So whatever tactics you did back then is rather irrelevant, I would say, to the current situation, because a lot of people got burned during the pandemic and will very likely never ever touch MLMs again, but they're rather focused on making actual money outside of that business model, and they utilize the opportunities that companies give us in this day and age, or they might have started their own business at this point. So none of that is comparable, and I would like to hear some practical tips, because I think that can be actually quite helpful. Like I said, I don't think that network marketing is recession proof, because you also depend on people. You depend on people buying the product, and if we are in a recession, what do you not pay for? Overpriced products in general, unless you want to treat yourself with luxury products. So in this case, in Pampered Chef, why would you pay for overpriced kitchen items or knives? They might be good, but you might venture towards others. You might be more careful what you spend your money on in general. And network marketing companies are currently struggling. The overall industry is struggling.
I just opened it up for discussion. I asked my team, I was like, what can we do? And the consensus was, okay, well, what is a pain point that people have? Right? So during any kind of crisis or recession or financial whatever, people focus on necessity over, want to have, right? They focus on pain points over pleasure. But here's the thing, even during crisis, people are still searching for pleasure. So we don't want to dismiss that. But the reason why it's so important, like right now, if you think about even just marketing online, if you were to talk about all of these, incentive trips and traveling, and maybe like that's one of your favorite parts about what you do. You earn the incentive trip every year, and that's your absolute favorite part. There's nothing wrong with that. And chances are there's probably one or two people out there that would work the business the way you work the business just to go on those trips. But the majority of people are not thinking about pleasure. They're thinking about the pain that they're sitting in right now. They can't keep their water and electric on, right? They can barely afford groceries, much less gas, right? How in the world are they even going to, drive to and from work because they can't even pay for the gas to help them get there, right? And so what you need to be thinking through is, and maybe you're not financially struggling right now, but the majority of people are, and even some of you probably are, right? But just thinking through that lens of like, how can I speak to that person, right? And it's not to say we're not, it's not like changing up your messaging in regards to, the quality of people that you're looking for. And I'm not talking about that, right? What I'm talking about is just in general, like when you're having those conversations, it's not to say don't tell them the positive, or don't talk about like what they can do and have and earn, but instead find out their pain point, right? Like find out why this could help them. Have a conversation, ask questions, because when you ask questions, for starters, people love to talk about themselves. Okay. So like they will answer the questions, they will tell you the things. Most people will tell their life story if you allow them the chance to do it.
So recession proof your business in this case doesn't mean sell products, but find the current pain points of people to join your team, how to recruit people. I mean, that is an ongoing topic, that MLMs are predatory. Huns use very predatory tactics to recruit people, because what is a pain point? Finances. We have seen the pitch went from become a millionaire with hardly any effort to, well, if you want to make a good full-time income, then come on over here, to now, if you want to just substitute the income and support your spouse while you stay at home with your kids, and you want to make 200 to 500 bucks each and every month, then come on over as well. It's the same pain point. Finances. People want money. People need more money to keep up with the rising cost. And that is the same story. It's the same thing as before. But interesting that it's not really about selling the products to hopefully happy customers during the recession. It's about recruiting the people. That's a surprise.
And so, when you hear, like, pay attention to things when they're talking a little bit about, oh my gosh, like, life is so crazy right now because all of my kids are in sports, and it seems like, I can't afford the groceries, let alone we can't do takeout because it's just insane, right? And so for my paper check people, you're like, how can I help that mom who is like driving her kids all over the place, and getting takeout or drive through, which is super unhealthy, right? But then it's like she feels like that's her only option because she has no time to cook dinner and to do this and that. Like, how can you help that mom, right? How can you solve a problem, right? And talk to her pain.
How can you help that mom? By leaving her alone and not by luring her into a fake opportunity where most people lose money.
Okay. The person that can't afford gas, the person that can't afford, even makeup, the person that can't afford, they feel like they can't afford to be healthy, right? Like they can't afford to, whatever, right? Take a day off and go on a field trip because they don't have any extra, right? How can you talk to that person? And so, even when you're thinking through, not just planning your content, but even your conversations, focus on, that concept of, I want to address a pain point. And yes, we want to weave in some pleasure, but when we are only talking about all these good, positive things or whatever, I think it kind of, I don't want to say it creates distrust, but it's also like creates this, like, I don't know if it's like this false sense of hope, or even if it creates this, like resentment, because then people are like, that's easy for you to say, right? That's easy for you to say. You don't understand what I'm going through, right? Like you say I could do this and, make all this extra money and pay for my gas. That's easy for you to say, but I am so busy and I'm so anxious and overwhelmed. I can't even think about another thing. Or that's easy for you to say, I can't book a party right now because I'm working 3 jobs trying to blah, blah, blah. I'm barely surviving, right? And so I do think, no matter what, when you're thinking about, like I said, your content, when you're thinking about your bookings, when you're thinking about your team even, and how you're leading your team, I think it's okay to acknowledge the hard, the scary, the uncertain, the bad, like acknowledge, be like, look, I get it, right? Things are whatever, but what are we going to do about it, right?
Yeah, acknowledge your counterpart and also acknowledge that they're in pain for whatever reasons, for financial reasons, because they're super busy, because they are stretched thin for whatever reason. Yet again, most of the reasons it's financial reasons, just to say the word reason one more time. But how are you going to help? You're not. If I want somebody to listen to my woes, I have friends I can call. I have family members I can call and say, hey, I'm feeling shitty. Don't give me any tips, just listen. I don't need to join a network marketing company or listen to somebody on social media or on a call to tell me I understand your problems, because these people do not have the answer to my problems. They don't. Most people lose money in this industry, so there will be resentment no matter what. Whether you understand their fears and their anger and their woes, or if you promise them something, or if you tell them, hey, I might have an opportunity that might help you with your problems, and then they figure out after probably a rather short period of time that the Huns do not have the answer to your financial needs. That also causes resentment.
And so the other thing, which you guys know because you're in Multiply, Monique talks about the funnel of sales, and really that whole concept of serving, right? And problem solving. And then, I share about relational equity, because when people feel connected to a person or a cause or an organization, they're more likely to want to continue to do business or support them. So I would imagine you could all agree that maybe your customers and your hosts and whoever who have done business with you before, right? They probably are still hosting. They're still buying because there's that sense of trust, right? You've solved a problem to them before. Maybe they've used Plexus, or they've, used skincare or makeup or tried a certain product. And so there's this sense of trust around the brand that you represent, right? And this sense of trust around you. And so I also want to encourage you to leverage your existing customers, right? You might be thinking, why is someone that just had, a party with me, like, whatever, 2 months ago. Or I just had a customer who they just reordered their products from me. And you're thinking, I can't ask, blah, blah, blah. Well, get creative. How can you still leverage that person? Can you offer them something for each referral that they bring to you? Right? A free product, right? Can you offer them a different type of party or a different incentive or to be a part of something that you're doing, right? Maybe it could be as simple as you are running some kind of event and you message all of your current customers and say, hey, I'm going to be doing a ton of giveaways and prizes, and every single person that you invite, that's going to give you a bonus ticket. I want to love on my current existing, customers or my current existing hosts or whatever, right? And as a result, when you get 10 people into this group, send me a message and I'm going to send you a coupon, or I'm going to send you a free whatever, right? Like something smaller, something Happy Mail or whatever you want to do, or let them test out a new product if your company's launching something new, and ask for feedback or say, hey, I'll let you test out this new product during the event or whatever. You can go live or take a picture or whatever, right? And just get creative, okay? Because I think sometimes it's not that we want to stay uncomfortable, right? Like people don't want to be like overweight, or people don't want to be whatever. But the reality is, in order to change, like if we're using health and weight, and I'm speaking to myself, okay, like we're using all of that healthy lifestyle as an example, right? If you were to ask someone who is overweight and maybe they have high blood pressure or diabetes or whatever, right? Would you prefer to be healthy, right? Like, and would you prefer to lose weight and do this and do that, whatever? They're going to say, of course, yes, right? And the majority of this world, I would say 99%, some might just be ignorant, but like 99.9% of the world knows, okay, I need to eat right and exercise. Pretty much, yeah, there's like 1% that have random health things that prevent them from whatever, right? But the majority of the world know what it takes. So then why are they not doing it? Because they're used to the discomfort. So in order to change, right, you have to be uncomfortable enough. And so for those of you that have been, I feel like we hear over and over again, clients come to us and say, oh, I missed that paycheck. I missed that like massive paycheck that I had in 2020, or, oh, I had to go back to work or pick up a second job or this or that, or now we're not able to do all of these things or whatever. And so my answer to that is, if someone out there in your company and just in this industry as a whole is having that level of success that you once had, then it is available to you as well. But we have to get creative, right? We have to pivot, as Ross would say on Friends. We have to think through like, okay, some things might still be working, but at this point, it's kind of like you have that decision.
That is this typical MLM BS. Just because somebody else in the company or on your team is successful, you were there at some point, doesn't mean that you can have the same amount of success, because context does matter. I think utilizing your customers is important. Check in with them, ask if they need more products, set up events for them. Although it does sound rather pricey if you offer coupons that are not from the company, or if you offer little gifts. If you already struggle in your business that is not your business but the MLM's business, then it will be very hard for you to put more money into a business that will eventually not pay you, because most MLM businesses don't pay people. You need to invest to make more money, yes, but that is true for you running your actual own business, not for network marketing companies. So you can end up in more financial difficult situations than before because you put so much more money into parties, driving somewhere, driving further away, setting up more of these events, and investing monies in goodies that you then hand over to people who have 10 referrals for you. And to look at people in your company who are currently successful and thinking, hey, if they can do it, then I can do it, is also not necessarily correct. Because what is their advantage? Did they come from another company? Did they have a big team before? Are they well connected within the company? Do they have uplines that do help them, that position people under them because they're at a critical part within somebody's MLM tree? Or those people already have a substantial following on social media? Have they ever been in network marketing before, and now for the first time they can bring over the excitement and they recruit half of their family and of their neighborhood, people who might die off after half a year? All of that is of course context, and it does matter. But that is something that the Huns don't ever acknowledge, because it's up to you to be creative and to be inspired, and it's up to you wanting to do the actual work. But we cannot ignore all of the circumstances around you. Why am I doing this? But you cannot ignore all of the circumstances that are so important, why some people in network marketing are successful and others are not.
Am I going to figure it out, or am I going to sit in the discomfort? Right? Just like that person who's overweight and unhealthy, are they willing to be uncomfortable enough to change? or are they going to sit in the discomfort? Because either one is hard.
There's a difference between somebody wanting or needing to lose weight. There's a very clear science how you can do that, compared to somebody who's in network marketing, where there's a very clear science, statistic, and data why you will very likely not be successful in that industry. These things are not comparable.
It's hard to stay overweight and unhealthy. It's hard to get healthy. It's hard to make those sacrifices and those decisions. I was even just telling my mom, for those of you that missed it, we're moving and downsizing. So my desk is in my parents' upstairs. And I was telling her, she was cooking last night. And I was like, please tell me you're going to cook healthy. I was like, I've been eating so terrible, right? And so it's like my own fault, but it's like, I know that it's a time commitment, right? To make better choices. And so I want to just encourage you. The final point I would make in regards to this conversation is, of course, recruiting. I think the best thing you have during a recession and during a time of, struggle is the opportunity for someone to make money. Because to you, some of you on here might be like, I make several $1,000s a month, and there's not many people that are willing to put in the effort that I put in to make that, right? Or even some of you are like, I make $500 a month and I haven't found anybody that's able to do that. But the reality is some people just need, I think there's a lot of statistics out there, and I think the number is like $400, right? The average person can't cover a $400 emergency, right? And so I just want to encourage you to think through that lens of like the person that needs that extra $400. Because while yes, we are looking for business builders and we are looking for, those leveled up people, but I think a lot of those people can't even think about adding something else on or doing something else because they're so scared of the uncertain. They're so scared of what could be or whatever.
Isn't it interesting how the Huns like to comment on dates and facts and statistics and data? What is it that most people need an additional $400 each and every month? So that's a number we're focusing on, but we're not focusing on the abysmal failure rate in network marketing. And of course, you need to recruit. Thanks for admitting that.
And so your solution, right, to that pain point of, I don't know what, how we're going to afford. My husband had to get a third job or whatever, right? Or my kids, I even knew someone who had to pull their kids out of private school and they really wanted their kids there. And so they moved to another location just so their kids could be in a better school zone, right? And so these are all things that you can solve.
Yeah, except that you can't. So figure out your counterpart's pain point, pretend that you have a solution for them, and then lure them into a predatory system. But that is not new. That is not something that the Huns do now during the recession. They've done that always.
Right? That you can help with. And so I think my encouragement today is for you to kind of, not completely go like, oh, the world is ending, it's a recession, the market's going to crash. Like that's a little dramatic. But my point is to address it and to recognize, and even I think it's healthy to have a conversation, right? It's like, don't sweep it under the rug because eventually you're going to have to address it, right? If we all just swept our problems under the rug, if it was like, imagine your dog pooped in the living room and you just swept it under the rug, like eventually you're going to have to address the poop under the rug, right? And so to me, y'all are laughing, but right? To me, when I think about the recession and just the way people are, even Monique and I have had this conversation, it's like, how can I create my business? And this is what you should be asking. How can I create my products, my opportunity? And, how can I approach my business? All of these things in a way that makes it a necessity. Because back, during all that inflation and like that, stimulus checks, everyone is having to pay that stuff off that they got paused, right? And so before it was like, whatever I want to have, I'm going to buy. And that's what was happening. Now it's, I'm only getting what I need to have. So you need to be thinking through that lens of how can I create content, whether it's for your parties, whether when you're going live, whether it's just social media in general, like how can I create content in a way that really just paints this picture of this is something that someone needs to have, right? And how can we talk to our teams about it as well? How can we either provide content and suggestions for them, even a framework, like create a framework of like, hey, here's our, ideal host, here's our ideal customer, here's our ideal whatever as a team. How can we help this person? Like, what are their pain points right now? That's a whole training you could literally do collectively, like a group thing with your team, is to say, okay, what does this person need right now? Now, not everyone, you might be like, her name is, Candace, she's a mom, name her, do whatever you want to do, right? With your team. The reality is, right, other people are going to men are going to buy from you, single people are going to buy, whatever, right? We already know that. But I think it's a very healthy exercise because then it helps start getting those creative juices flowing of saying, okay, if I am this person and I'm going throughout my day, how can my products or service or business opportunities support something that is causing pain in their life right now? how can I help that person? Right. And I think because of that exact conversation that I had, with my team, it gave them a little bit more confidence walking into this uncertainty.
I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for listening to my podcast today. One way to spread the word and share what you've learned today with others is just to simply take a screenshot, post it on your social platforms, and don't forget to tag me. And if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star review on whatever platform that you're listening to this episode on. As always, I appreciate your love, support, and encouragement. I'm cheering you on, friend.
Oh, I'm gonna share it. I'm currently sharing it. Don't push the recession under the rug. That is something that the Huns don't do anyways, because that is one of their main pain points that they like to use to juice money out of new recruits. You, need to make some sort of an extra income if you want to keep your lifestyle now, and I can help you with that. But what they're pushing under the rug is that they can't help, because most people are not even able to make $400 or $500 each and every month before expenses and before taxes in network marketing companies. And that's the side, the failure rate, the inability for the industry to just create leaders and success stories. And with the success stories, I mean people who simply make a profit, which in my opinion is a minimum requirement. If something is supposed to be your job, my minimum requirement is that I make a profit. I am not surprised that this was a little bit disappointing because there were no actual tips. Every time I have a call or a podcast or an opportunity call or a post that says I have practical tips, I'm somewhat excited because I think there are actual practical tips. The only one here was use the pain points that your counterpart has and reach out to customers and do more. But that's not helpful. So this is pretty much a nothing burger, word salad. Or in German, you would say in die hohle Hand gepupt. So it's like a fart in your hand. Yeah, I know, we have beautiful sayings over here. Not a lot of practical tips. And my conclusion is you cannot recession-proof a network marketing company because it's not based on your own hard work. It is based on other people's hard work. And if they decide they want to leave because right now during the recession they lose a lot of money and it's not to their advantage, then you have no control over that. And if people don't want to buy pricey network marketing products that you yourself haven't designed because you're just a salesperson for that company, then that is also not under your control. It's not under your control if somebody wants to join your team or if somebody wants to buy from you, but you need to utilize the pain points. If you like this video, then please subscribe, give it a thumbs up. If you want to comment something, feel free to do that in the comment section down below. That does help the channel out a lot. A big thank you and a shout out to the channel members. I appreciate your support. Thank you to the returning viewers. I appreciate your support as well. And a big hello and welcome. I also appreciate the support of the people who newly joined this channel and who started to watch the videos. I appreciate that you're here, and I do hope that if you like these videos, I will see you in my next one very, very soon. Until then, tschüss!